You wouldn't believe how many public sector workers in New Zealand earn more than double the average wage on the taxpayer's dime. For reference, if you were earning minimum wage, this would be your yearly salary before tax. But for the purpose of this video, we'll work off the national median. I'm Caleb Brewerton, bringing you the real shite. There are many branches of government, and each of them operates with a chief executive. This person is responsible for the performance and operation of their agency, providing advice to ministers, implementing the policy and programs of the government of the day, developing and maintaining the capability of the public service to engage with Māori, and promoting diversity and fostering workplaces that are inclusive of all groups. You then have deputy chiefs, general managers, financial officers, regional directors, etc. And in one department, you even have someone titled the Chief People and Assurance Officer. Now, I spent hours going through every 2025 annual report for government and local bodies, as 2026 is not yet available. I logged the averages, how many people, full remuneration, and so on. So here is the full list of all agencies, commissions, departments, authorities, and ministries I could find, though there are almost definitely more. Pause to have a quick look before we dive into it. Some necessary context here is that FTE, or full-time equivalent, does not always equate to the number of people working there. It's possible there are more people who just had an extended holiday or are just slacking, not doing their 40 hours a week. But that's why there are decimals of workers. Additionally, these figures are the average, so most likely the chief executive gets paid well above this number and others get paid less. But the data is not specific enough in who actually gets paid what, except for the chief executives. Let's get into it, and boy do we have a lot of standout earners here. Health New Zealand taking the top spot by a mile, shooting for the $1 million annual paycheck, although as of 2026, only 5 members of their leadership team actually hold the doctor title. Next up is New Zealand Green Investment Finance, which I had never heard of before this. Their chief executive was sitting at almost $1 million annually, with the other 4 members taking home upwards of $500,000 each. However, people caught on to this, let's be honest, scam, and now the government will stop making new investments and will wind down its portfolio. Taking third place is Kāinga Ora. I was very surprised to see an organisation like this at number 3, but at the same time, I wasn't. Their chief executive had a payout of $1.066 million in a year after receiving his $700,000 plus salary and a 6-month severance payment for quitting. For a ministry focused on housing those in need, a salary equivalent to a house is ironic. Then you have random organisations like the Sport Integrity Commission. I understand the need for sports integrity, but why can't you have a few people dedicated to that on the board of Sport New Zealand rather than its own agency? With an average pay of over $200,000 across 5.8 people, that's pretty bonkers. Any other standout champions, let me know. But it's not just government departments. Every council also has the same amount of bureaucracy happening. These are the average salaries across city councils and some unitary authorities. Auckland is enormous, as it is both a regional and city council for over 1.5 million people, which of course means its mayors and councillors are taking home the biggest pays. They also have a ridiculous amount of staff on over $200,000 a year, and 10 people on over $500,000. What's interesting is that the Tauranga Council chief executive gets paid almost the same as Auckland's, with a population only 10% of the size. Its councillors are also the second highest paid, followed by Christchurch and Wellington. Tauranga also has the most staff on over $200,000 per year out of any other city council, for some unknown reason. I guess when you spend $6 million per year on a building you don't even own, money is no object, right? Wellington is also bloated in terms of staffers earning over $200,000 a year, and comes in third for their chief executive earnings. The story for senior leadership staff is no different here either. Most of these people are comfortably sitting on about $200,000 to $400,000 annually. Auckland Council takes the top spot, as expected, for pay, with Wellington, Tauranga and Hamilton all not that far behind. Greymouth was surprisingly low for this list, but also has the smallest population. In total, we have 180 people here taking home $51.5 million between them every single year. As for regional councils, here is the full list excluding the unitary bodies. Not as much to go through here, but I'll start off with ECAN. The highest paid chair and chief executive and their councils are sitting at number 2 on the earnings scale. Wellington's chief executive is also shooting for the $500,000 mark by the looks of it, and their chair and councillors are pretty well off too, taking the top spot for council pay. Bay of Plenty chief executive coming in at 3rd, and Northland's councillor average surprised me too, especially when Waikato can operate on less for a significantly larger region. But hey, these councillors are on chump change compared to the amount senior leadership is on. In this list, somehow Environment Southland have secured their leadership team the highest pay out of any region, excluding unitary authorities. Once again closely followed by Wellington and then Bay of Plenty. West Coast again with the most normal looking salaries, yet still more than double the median. In total, these 80 people have secured themselves over $22 million per year. So, how is their pay set? Well, mayors and councillors' salary is set by the Remuneration Authority. The authority considers the size of the governance role of each council, the average time required by an elected member, and a general comparison with Parliament salaries. Unlike government departments, councils set their own chief executive rates, not the Remuneration Authority or the Public Service Commission. They consider many factors like salaries paid at other organisations, basically saying if one council sets their pay high, the other councils follow suit. Although the new council amalgamations will be coming in soon, which will hopefully reduce some of the congestion within local government. At the same time, it could lead to more bloating within the new larger councils, but we will have to wait and see how it plays out. And finally, for shites and giggles, here is the government salary as of 1st of July 2026. Everyone is getting a nice 2% pay rise for their hard work, including all the opposition, as I don't see either side saying no, we don't need this. Christopher Luxon will be on $520,000 per year, David Seymour on $369,000, Winston Peters is on $327,000, Leader of the Opposition Chris Hipkins is on $309,000, Chloe Swarbrick and Marama Davidson are on $226,000, and Debbie Naronopaka and Rawiri Waititi are on $209,000. Other MPs can range from $327,000 down to $240,000, depending on cabinet and portfolios, while a backbench MP earns $181,000. This is before any extra perks they receive courtesy of the taxpayer, such as a $1,000 a week accommodation supplement. For the simplicity of this sheet, I haven't included this, but each party not in power currently has their pay set based on how many members they have in the House, which is why it just says Greens and Te Pāti Māori. So have a quick gander at the full version. Nowadays, the average salary of a teacher is only half that of a backbench MP, when 50 years ago the two were actually comparable. But they don't set their own pay, do they? Well, you're right, they don't. MPs, councillors and mayors all have their pay set by the Remuneration Authority. Chief executives' pay in local government is set by the council they sit on, and the Public Service Commission sets the salary of the chief executives of most departments. And finally, the remainder of senior leadership and other employees in each department is set by that department itself. And one question I kept asking myself during this research is, why is this so complicated? Surely this entire process could be managed by one entity. And why can't the rest of us sit in on board meetings determining our own salaries? So, the total amount being paid out to senior leaders in ministries, commissions and agencies in this list is over $229 million. If they all took a 20% pay cut, which in some cases should be more, it would save the taxpayer almost $46 million a year. Including councils and other organisations I missed, I'm sure that number would be upwards of $60 million. And that's assuming we didn't touch MPs, councillors or mayors' salaries. This is just senior leadership who you didn't vote in. According to the Public Service Commission, who is responsible for setting the chief executive's salaries, the approach to setting chief executive remuneration balances two things. the need to maintain public trust and confidence in the public sector, and the need to attract and retain chief executives who are motivated by a spirit of service. There are a range of reasons why public sector remuneration, particularly at the senior executive level, is and needs to be lower than the private sector. The chief executive is then usually responsible for employing the rest of the staff, through which they agree on terms of their salary, along with the respective department board. Now, for the rest of New Zealand, these figures are a bit different. The average wage here is roughly $81,000 per year. However, this figure is inflated from people earning higher salaries, as we've seen. A more accurate representation is the median wage of $72,000. Then again, let's say you were making closer to $25 an hour, that figure would be just more than 50 grand before tax, but we'll work off the median. From that, we can work out that the chief executive of Auckland makes 9 times that of the average person, the ECAN chief executive makes more than 7 times, and the 370 full-time equivalent senior leaders from the top 50 agencies on my list make more than 6 times the average Joe. So, here's what I think. In a lot of cases, having higher than average pay is fair, but some officials are earning 4, 5, 6, even 10 times the median wage of a Kiwi, some even higher. How does that benefit the public? You cannot tell me that any government employee deserves more than 3 times the pay of the average person. There's no world in which you can defend them by saying, oh, they work harder, or they have more stressful jobs, or we might lose them to the private sector if we don't pay competitively. Bullshit. As the Public Service Commission states, we need those who are motivated by a spirit of service. The very act of comparing the public and private sector is wrong. One is in the business of making money, and one is providing service to the taxpayer, though both aren't trying to lose money. But somewhere along the way, these two got mixed up. If you're in government as a publicly elected official or not, you are there to serve the people, to make their lives better and easier. You're not there to line your own pockets. If anything, when the country is in a bad state and there's economic decline, you should be taking pay cuts. But while every New Zealander is feeling the squeeze, every public service leader's pay has been upping by thousands. So, if you're one of these senior officials and disagree with me, feel free to reach out. I would actually love to hear your side of the story. Anyway, I think we should be calling for even greater transparency of costs across the whole leadership teams, not just chief executives. And on a case-by-case basis, each of these people need their pay reviewed and lowered accordingly. And some organizations need to be merged with others for efficiency and money saving. But the question is, what do you think?